I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into a world of danger, intrigue, and suspense with Bruce Ball. He has penned a powerful book. It is called Quinn's Dilemma, trapped between the Justice Department, mob, and a notorious union. This gripping novel follows Parker Quinn as he leaves the hectic world of Wall Street, only to find himself entangled in a web of assassination attempts, government stings, and ruthless mob bosses. Get ready for a heart-pounding story of survival and unexpected twists that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Good River Print and Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below the interview. Bruce, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Glad to be here, Logan.
I got to tell you, if you make a movie out of this, I want to play Parker Quinn. He's a cool guy. He's a great character and a perfect hero. How did you come up with creating this character?
Because 90% of this book is the same as a diary. I was Parker Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
As it says in the beginning of the book, be careful what you wish for, and may you lead an interesting life.
Yeah.
Well, I was in Wall Street, downtown Manhattan, Wall Street, and finally got tired of it and was given an opportunity to manage another brokerage office. And because it was not doing well, the firm was either going to have me resurrect it or they were going to close it down. And one of the ways that so I get to move out of Manhattan, away from Manhattan, and into a much smaller town, which is more peaceful. So part of my wish was granted, a little more peace and quiet than I had in downtown Manhattan. But one of the ways that you get to get an office to be more profitable is to invite, entice, steal, however you want to call it, brokers from other firms, and they come to your firm, and then they bring all their business with them, and naturally that makes the revenue go up. What I didn't realize was the one investment broker was doing all the business for the union in the town of 41,000 members. And he was doing about $1 million a year in revenue. So it made my office look awfully good.
Yeah.
But what it wasn't so visible, shall we say, at the time was he was paying the head of the union $250,000 a year for the privilege of getting all this business.
Basically a kickback.
It's called bribery.
Yeah.
Or a kickback, yes.
Yeah.
And it certainly was something that the federal government wasn't terribly pleased with the union. So they had some inkling, not from me, some inkling that there was some bribery going on. And they sent the FBI. So I had FBI agents, federal prosecutors trying to get to the head of the union. And a perfect example of how difficult this can be. I got a call from an FBI agent who said, I'd like to meet with you and talk to you. You know, maybe we can do some business together. And I walked in it was in a motel, and I walked into the motel room, and the first words out of his mouth were, "You're doing 7 to 10 years for bribery." And that is when I really started to learn what was going on. And I, I just walked out, but they said that they were going to continue to pursue me, and that's what they did.
Oh,
Every time it seemed like I turned around, there was an FBI agent staring at me, and I had the opportunity to sit down in front of federal prosecutors who were even more, shall we say, vocal
huh.
in trying to convince me that I knew a lot about what was going on and that I should tell them so that they could prosecute the head of the union, who was a fairly ruthless person. Um, it got to be very interesting.
I can imagine. So this book is in many ways your story fictionalized?
It is my story and it's not fictionalized.
Wow.
Seriously, I
Yeah.
went through all of this. The
Amazing.
only, the only, I would say it's 90% of exactly what happened. Every now and then I would throw in a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but nothing truly material.
Yeah.
And I did go down to that motel, did meet with the FBI agents, did meet with federal prosecutors, had
Mm.
them after me all the time. So the second part of the beginning of the book, may you live an interesting life. I assure you, there's nothing more interesting in your life than being persecuted and prosecuted
Wow.
and chased by the FBI and prosecutors.
Exactly, exactly. And now here you are in a big fish in a small pond because you're working out of a little town doing this type of work where in New York City, I'd imagine people are getting bribes and kickbacks all the time from unions and businesses and corporations to be their broker or their trader or what have you, right?
That could be.
Yeah.
I could not confirm that
Yep.
because I didn't live that,
Right. Right.
but I lived this.
Yeah. Were you able to eventually convince them that you were an innocent man caught up in a situation that you had no idea about until they brought it to light?
Well, I don't know that I could actually say I convinced them,
Yeah.
but I got called to a higher ranking federal prosecutor who, when I walked in, said the same thing. You're doing 7 to 10 years for bribery, but you're doing it in a different way. What you're doing is, at that time, companies that were of a decent size and had stock shares, but they may not have been publicly tradable. In other words, they had never been offered to the public. So you wouldn't find it on the New York Stock Exchange or the over the counter. And what would happen would be that a brokerage firm at some point in time would accept the uh, invitation to bring them public so that the public could then trade the stocks. And giving them the new stock, in essence, to your clients who paid for them, what would happen would be this, let's say the stock came out at $10 in the morning. By afternoon, when the market closed, it could be $30. Needless to say, that's a great reward for uh, your your
It's a great
clients,
return on investment, right?
to say the least.
Yeah.
And what I told the federal prosecutor was, "What you don't," he was accusing me of doing this because of I had. I'll be gentle with this. I had been invited to hire the wife of the mob's hitman,
Mm.
and I accepted that invitation
Yeah.
since he was probably one of the most ruthless people on the planet.
You
And
don't say no to him too easily, right?
no, you don't say no to him too easily. And I was a good friend of the number two man in the union, and I
Mhm.
hired his wife too.
Hmm.
So the prosecutor was saying I was given all these new issues and making all this money for these people, and it was as a bribery. And I told him, I said, well, you can't do that because everybody who is employed by a brokerage firm has a code in the account that they have, which prohibits new issues from being placed into these accounts. So your threats are baseless.
Hmm.
And I got up and I left.
Wow. Yeah, it's not easy to do when you're going against the government. They have unlimited resources. They have teams of lawyers that can investigate you, teams of detectives that wouldn't think twice about even manufacturing evidence in some circumstances.
Well,
So
thank
yeah,
goodness they didn't in this
they
one.
didn't, right? You must have been extremely stressed during this time. Tell me what impact it had on you and your life and those around you.
Well, the interesting thing at that point in time was I was not married. I had been gotten a divorce, but I did, in fact, through all my let's call them meetings, because every Saturday I'd go down to a local bar called Anthony's
Mhm.
and meet with the head of the mob, the head of the union, and we'd just sit and chat and have lunch and all that kind of couple of drinks and so on and so forth. And while I was doing that, I happened to see a very beautiful, and I mean stunningly beautiful woman. And I went up and I said, "Can I buy you a drink?" And she said, "I don't know. I see who you're sitting with." I said, "Yes, but I'm not really one of them." And we started dating, and over a several year period of time, we were deeply in love, and we got married,
Wow.
and didn't have to pay for it with the union or the mob or anything else because she was not part of their action at all.
Right. Right.
But she was aware of what was going on, so she would tell me, "Please, for Pete's sake, be careful."
Yeah. Yeah. Because people, when you're being investigated, guilty or not, people look at you a little sideways. They wonder if there's some truth in what they're saying. And so you probably had to deal with the specter of that as well, right?
Indeed, and the truth be known, it wasn't that I was doing anything wrong, but
Right.
I knew that people were,
Mm.
and I know who was doing what to whom, and that meant that the FBI wanted me to be sitting on a stand in court and ratting out as many people as they possibly could, or as they
Right.
could get me to. And so it's trying to avoid being uh, killed by the union, frankly.
Yeah. You don't want to be a snitch in
Ex-
that situation because
exactly.
the union guys who are a lot like mobsters, if not mobsters, could rub you out in mob lingo if they found out that you're working with the feds to set them up, you know?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
you're between a rock and a hard place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not the most comfortable place to be. And
Right.
as I said, may you live an interesting life.
Yeah.
I can assure you it was interesting, if not terrorizing from time to time.
Yeah.
Uh, we had a meeting one time and they were laughing. The mob and the union guys were laughing like crazy. And I kind of just leaned over and I said, what are you laughing at?" And they said, "Well, we just, it, the hitman just told us about a recent hit that he did by putting a bomb in a paper bag and putting it in the front door, ringing the doorbell, lighting the bag, and having the man come out and step on it and blow himself up. They thought that was hilarious.
Amazing. That's quite a spin on Ding Dong Ditch, huh?
It certainly is.
Yeah, my son used to do it with a bag of dog poop that he'd set on fire and put it on people's doors as a wayward teenager, but no bombs involved.
Well, there's a difference between getting your foot dirty with
Yeah, and getting
poop.
your body blown to smithereens, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Crazy. And that's a veiled threat to you, basically. This is how we deal with people.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happened was that, I mean, this was a big, this branch, this was part of a huge union nationally. And this branch actually covered several states. They had 41,000 members.
Yeah.
So it was influential, and the gentleman running the union was about as cutthroat as anybody in the mafia.
Right.
So it was interesting.
Yeah.
It was a little dangerous, and
Yeah. Absolutely.
but I
Absolutely.
managed to get through it.
What about your superiors? What about the folks that, I'm assuming you worked for a brokerage firm that had branches around the United States.
Correct.
What did the hierarchy of that industry, of that entity, know about this, and what kind of pressure did it put on you?
Nothing,
Yeah.
because it was going from either turn it around or we're closing the branch.
Right.
Oh, I turned it around okay.
Yeah.
And they really never, I think at times you would just as soon not know things so that when people ask you, you don't have to answer.
Right.
So
Right.
knowing too much, and heaven only knows, while I wasn't doing anything wrong, I sure knew who was.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And not to mention the fact I would, if a rumor got out that I was going to go and talk to the FBI finally,
Hmm.
I'd probably be looking at paper bags in front of my door.
Exactly. Exactly. Was the person who was responsible for taking the bribe or the kickback or whatever you want to call it and bringing in the union business, was he ever prosecuted?
He was indeed prosecuted, and not only was he prosecuted, he was convicted.
Hmm.
He was an older gentleman, older man. I wouldn't call him a gentleman. And he got out of going to, they convicted him because they sent him to prison for 10 years.
Mhm.
Obviously, he wouldn't be running the union anymore.
Right.
And 3 days before he was going off to prison, he died.
Huh.
So he got out of it the old fashioned way. And then
Suicide or murder? What do you think? What's your guess?
I don't honestly know, but
Yeah.
he was dead.
Yeah.
And then the number two guy in the union, who was a friend of mine, took over,
Yeah.
and he was running the union,
Hmm.
but he wasn't taking $250,000 a year.
Right.
And he kind of just relaxed things a little bit
Yeah.
because his predecessor was as about as vicious as you can get to
Hmm.
anybody who wanted to, who was going to cause them any kind of problem.
Right.
And with 41,000 members in a union, every now and then somebody would get hurt
Yeah. Yeah.
because they were saying the wrong thing.
Having this as a backdrop in your life, did it, completely stress you out? Did it make you, constantly looking over your shoulder? What was it like? Life must have been tough. And how long a period of time did this go on for you?
It was about 6, 7 years.
Wow.
Um, yes, it was stressful to say the least, but the good thing was I met a wonderful, fabulous, beautiful woman, and that too, there's the balance. She was understanding. Uh, she would tell me, "Be careful of this, be careful of that," and it was not. It was sometimes not easy, but boy, she was beautiful,
Yeah.
and I loved her.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. It's wonderful you found great love during that time. You certainly needed it. You needed some comforting. You needed some salvation. You needed someone who believed in you. That's for sure. Did it shorten your career at the brokerage house? Did you leave earlier than you normally would have? Tell us a little bit about that. Did you wind up retiring early, or did it not
I
impact you that way?
no, I retired from that brokerage house, and
Hmm.
uh, I was in my, I think I was around 66
Hmm.
at the time, and I couldn't have been more than 6 months, and I realized I had made a mistake because I was bored to death, and it struck me, why don't you write a book about all that happened?
Yeah.
And so I did,
Yeah.
and I didn't know anything about
Yeah.
publishing or anything like that. And I didn't do much of anything with the book. It was just sitting there.
Yeah.
And then somebody finally told me, why don't you call up Amazon? They'll self-publish for you.
Hmm.
So I did, and it's this has been an interesting thing too, because now the book is. I get a lot of people calling me. We want to do this, that, and the other thing, so on and so forth, and all you have to do is pay us.
Right, right. Yeah, beware of that for sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. If I wouldn't even, Logan, I wouldn't begin to tell you how much I've been scammed out of.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. Be careful of that. There are a lot of shysters out there for sure. Let me talk to you a little bit about your book and writing it. Was it difficult at times writing this? Was it painful because you had to relive this chapter in your life?
No, believe it or not, no, because I know how it ended.
Yeah.
So knowing how it ended meant you're going to be able to get through it,
Right.
and it was the only thing I had to worry about was memory.
Yeah.
Who did what to whom, and how did this play out, and so on and so forth, and how do you write in your bride and the things that you go through, and there's all kinds of things in there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, would you love to see this turned into a movie? Would you like to
Uh,
see, it'd be kind of cool to see this in film. I mean, because it's such an incredible story. It kind of reminds me a little bit of on Wall Street and a little bit, that kind of thing.
yes, yes. I think that it's the kind of movie that people can go and sit down and start to watch, and then are really truly hypnotized by the action and the threats, and is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? And is the FBI going to, prosecute him without any evidence, and all that sort of stuff. So yes, this is a tense. Uh,
Yeah. It's novel, absolutely. I think it would be a great screenplay. So Hollywood, if you're listening, turn this book into a screenplay. It would be terrific. I'm ready to play Parker, I'll tell you that. That's for sure. That would be great. I wanted to ask you, did this experience leave a bad taste in your mouth when it comes to the feds, the Department of Justice, law enforcement?
not over the long term, but during that period of time, certainly. I mean, I was not terribly pleased to be hounded and harassed by prosecutors and FBI agents. Um, But what they were trying to do certainly was uh, fill me with enough fear that it
Right.
would offset the fear of being executed by the mob.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it was a bit tense, to
Right.
say the least.
But
But
they never actually arrested you, or did they?
they did not.
Yeah.
They did not. And I think the reason for it is that they were hoping that at some point in time I would acquiesce and come in and tell them everything I knew.
Yeah.
And I certainly couldn't tell them enough to prosecute somebody. I don't think so.
Right.
But
Because what you knew was what you thought or what you believed. You didn't actually know. You didn't see this guy get the kickback and so forth and so on. Right.
precisely,
Yeah. So
precisely.
you had your hunches after a while because he was bringing in this business, and why would they do business with him and so forth, you
Right.
know?
Yeah,
Right.
he would get paid and then the money would go out. It's not like he'd write a check.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's pretty funny. You left the big city because the city is filled with sharks to go to a small town in the USA to get a more peaceful slice of life. And 180 degrees happened. The polar opposite of what you expected happened. You're under the spotlight, the suspicion of a federal investigation.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Exactly. And the 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 offset, some of the things that, well, I shouldn't say offsetting, but related to it were that the people in the office knew what was going on, and I didn't want them to be disappointed or nervous or anything like that. And I also didn't want them to dislike me either.
Yeah.
So it it worked out.
Yeah. Well, we're glad it did. We're glad you didn't wind up in jail. We're glad you didn't wind up with cement shoes on. We're glad we're glad you didn't wind up with somebody playing a deadly game of ding dong ditch with you, because under certain circumstances it could have gone that way, right?
Indeed. And to tell you how there was a gentleman who was the head of a major union, I won't say which one,
Mhm.
and he disappeared.
Hmm.
And the question was, what happened? I mean, he was famous. What
Yeah.
happened to so and so?
Yep.
And their joking response is, he is now a permanent, upstanding member of the community because they were building a football stadium across the river from Manhattan where the New York Giants played. And he is now an upstanding member of the community because he's in a pillar of
Amazing.
concrete.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing. And I've got a sneaking suspicion I worked with Al Pacino when he portrayed that character in a certain movie called The Irishman, but I might be mistaken. You never know. If you're talking about Jimmy Hoffa, that's who Al Pacino played in The Irishman, that's for sure. And I got the pleasure of working with him there. This would be a great movie as well. Again, folks, Hollywood, if you're listening, take Bruce's true story and turn it into a wonderful film. He's fictionalized it a tad. The names have been changed to protect the innocent and the not so innocent as well.
exactly.
The name of the
Exactly.
book is Quinn's Dilemma, trapped between the Justice Department, the mob, and a notorious union. This gripping novel follows Parker Quinn as he leaves the hectic world of Wall Street, only to find himself entangled in a web of assassination attempts, government stings, and ruthless mob bosses. This is an amazing story if it were just a novel. What makes it truly mind-blowing is that it's Bruce's real life story contained on the
True.
pages of this book. You will
You,
just love it.
Logan, you can call me Parker if you want.
Okay, I'll call you Parker from now on. That sounds great. Thanks so much for joining me today, my friend.
It is my distinct pleasure, Logan.
It's my distinct pleasure and honor as well. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time. on Spotlight.